Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this informational meeting of Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 to order. Our first order of business, actually our second order of business, first order of business is called to order. Second order of business, committee reports, Experience Sioux Falls Bid Board, Jana Brecky.
Not a bid board, it wasn't a bid board meeting, but I did go to a meeting of the council, the ESF council, so I'm just going to give you a quick update of that, and I don't want to steal Terry's thunder because she's here to, to discuss that with you as well, but I'm just going to discuss the notes that I took at the advisory council meeting, and just good news overall. The revenues for ESF are up 130%, but they reminded us that that was a very conservative budget, so it's good that they had a conservative budget, but the good news is that the revenues are way up. Room tax, entertainment tax, both up. Good summer travel numbers, good occupancy rates, way up. The STAR report has it in the mid-80s and sometimes low 90s, so really good numbers for summer. Everyone really stepped up. And then in the marketing side, the video views are up 50%, visitor engagement up 101%. 31 pieces of mail turned last month, and those two aren't so important, but the one that I think is really exciting is 17 bus tours next month. So these are the kinds of things that show them, turning the corner in the way that we had hoped and the way they'd waited for and patiently, continued to do their job while things were tough. 2,500 showed up at the Ag Fair event this year, and the downtown Sioux Falls report from Sadie Swear was that local business downtown was doing very well. So just a lot of good news. One of the next things coming up is the Sanford International Tournament, the 13th through the 19th, with just an exciting week-long schedule of events. So all good news, and it was a pleasure to be there and a pleasure to report to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brecky. This time we'll have council remarks. Is there any councilor remarks? Seeing none, we're going to jump right into our first presentation, the 2022 Experience Sioux Falls. And I've been told that this is going to be the most exciting presentation we've had today. So, Terry?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for letting us be here today on this beautiful summer windy day, it feels like. My right hand is up here. Krista's going to take care of the PowerPoint, and you all have a packet before you with that same information. My name's Terry Schmidt, and I'm with Experience Sioux Falls. I always still want to call us the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau, but through our strategic planning process, we rebranded to Experience Sioux Falls. So I'll try to keep saying Experience Sioux Falls instead of CVB. We're actually a DMO, though. That's something that has been around for a while, but we haven't used a lot in our community. DMO stands for Destination Marketing Organization. And our mission is to market Sioux Falls as a one-of-a-kind destination and provide an energized visitor experience to enhance economic impact. To enhance economic impact. That's why we exist. The bid, which is what we're going to talk about today, was formed in 2011 by a group of the hoteliers in Sioux Falls who realized that our organization did not have enough money to compete. And so they decided we're going to tax ourselves, and worked with many of you who are on the council today and those in the past to say, let's tax ourselves $2 per room per night as a business improvement district in order to provide funds to what then was called the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau for the marketing and promotion of the visitor industry in Sioux Falls and increase the room night sales of lodging facilities within the business improvement district. And ultimately, again, to create economic impact throughout the community. Funding of the Convention and Visitors Bureau all comes from visitors. However, the hotels collect that money So it's on their bill at a hotel, and then the hotel turns around and submits that $2 per room per night to the city, and then you all allow us to have it for sales and marketing. Today we have 62 hotels in Sioux Falls, 5,499 hotel rooms. Moving on to some economic impact numbers you can see on your screen or up above. In 2019, we had 1,810,614 visitors that we could count. And that created an economic impact of over $455 million for our community. And then, as we all know, 2020 came along, and COVID pretty much knocked us off anything that was going in an upward direction. The travel industry nationwide was devastated, and we were a part of that. As you can see, it declines quickly on the slide that you're looking at. And as of right now in 2021, you can see what happened in 2020. You come down to 2021. So far, January through July, we've counted 648,000 visitors for $219 million in economic impact. So quite a difference. Now, remember, we have 5 months left to go. So, and again, this is only through July. We just received some numbers today that were phenomenal, really, really strong. But as we all know, school has started. Things are people are hunkering down with their families, so we're not sure where those numbers might go in the future. Just a little fun, by the way, Minnehaha County represents about 29% of all visitor spending in South Dakota. About 40% of all visitor spending occurs right here in this corner, all of South Dakota, which I have to tell you, in 2019, we outpaced the Black Hills for the first time in numbers of visitors and economic impact. Yay! We were really excited about that. Of course, 2020 we can't really, go by, but that was pretty exciting. So more than 46% of South Dakota's visitor industry generated labor income comes from our region. So you know how significant this industry is in not only our region, but all of South Dakota. If you look on to South Dakota tourism's numbers, you can see some growth and some downside in the South Dakota tourism. Again, these are 2020 numbers, 12.6 million visitors, but a 13% decrease. Shows a little bit here of what COVID has done to everything. I won't read these to you, but looking at the bottom one, still, because of the visitor industry, $780 in household savings, taxes, are saved for each household because of the visitor industry. So I think that's important. Lets us know, again, the impact. Okay, going on, the STAR report is something that we have a membership to, where they collect data nationally and internationally, for that fact, and we can really find out what our competitive set is doing and how we fall into that. If you look at that slide, for occupancy in 2021, we're increasing. We've been increasing this summer. We're at 61.6% for occupancy so far. That's up. If you look at 2020, we've shown a nice increase. Now, if you go down one and look at the average daily rate, $94.72, we're in the middle of that pack. Our competitive set are all those cities you've got listed up there, and those are the ones that we really compete with. Rapid City, to be honest with you, we don't compete much at all for conventions, meetings, and events. Once in a while something will come through, but more the leisure traveler. We're a stop, a 3 to 5 day stop coming and going, but most of them are headed west. But the rest of these cities are ones that we compete with often for conventions, meetings, and events. So our occupancy at the top, 61.6, we've been holding our own in 2021. St. Paul, a lot of people are surprised, occupancy at 39.6% in St. Paul, so it's still pretty tough up there. Now, again, This is only through July. So remember, there's 5 more months to go. ADR, average daily rate, 94.72%. I know some of the hotels would like to see that be higher, but that is where the actual is through July. Okay, then if you look at the day trend, August, just for the month of August, just to show you kind of what's going on, the black bar is the one for week 4 of August. We're kind of all over the place, and then we take a big jump. Why do we take that jump? Well, Frank Gurnick is sitting here and just ran a huge soccer tournament in Sioux Falls. Thank you, Frank. That helped that occupancy go up. We also had a national softball tournament in town, same weekend, and we also had the marathon in town. The marathon did not create a huge number of rooms, but it was still a good piece of business for our community. And then that's occupancy going down to average daily rate. Yeah, we did okay. We would have liked to have done better for the hotels, but it's still a good report. Okay, moving on. School, as I mentioned, school's back in session. We are expecting to see, we're going up like this all summer. We know now realistically it's going to decrease some and maybe even level off. We just hope it doesn't decrease too much or like it did during COVID. So, how did we survive COVID? Well, when I say we, I mean the hotels, the restaurants, the retail, those you've all talked to many, many times throughout this whole ordeal. We survived it by laying off one person, by furloughing many of these staff members that are sitting back here. We cleaned our own office and saved $9,000 in janitorial expenses to get through. And the city of Sioux Falls, through the Sioux Falls Alive campaign, and the state through the South Dakota Tourism Cares campaign, both came in, the city came in and at $225,000 worked with us to do a campaign about Sioux Falls being alive. Let's go, let's keep it going. I know you're all familiar with that campaign. And then South Dakota Tourism came in at $950,000, and we were able to do a ton of marketing out of market, which was to keep our name out there, to let people know that we're safe. Come here, we're ready when you're ready. How did we adapt? Well, one of the things that happened during the adapting phase was, and I guess it's part of the survival phase too, Minnesota helped save us. They were over here with conventions, weddings, leisure travel. A lot of Minnesota business came over, and we thank them for that a lot. But really adapting, Zoom became the way of the day, as for all of you, virtual. I mean, we couldn't go to trade shows, we couldn't do sales blitzes, all the things that we do in a one-on-one. We're a people business, as you know, and we like to be in the face and talk to people and be able to sell and have them feel what we feel about Sioux Falls. That was all pulled back. We did our best with virtual, with Zoom, organic marketing, National Travel and Tourism Week. We did more than probably we've ever done. The governor was here to help us rev up our community and rev up the industry to keep going and come on and get out and come to Sioux Falls. The U.S. Travel Association did a campaign called Let's Go There. And it was nationwide, of course, but we got involved in that. And then the thing that really kind of hurt, but it was the right thing to do, we did not print a visitor guide last year. There was no way we felt we could go to our hotels, restaurants, retailers, activities, attractions, and say, do you want to buy an ad again? When things were so bad. So we just pushed through with that same guide for a second year in order to keep us out there, but not task any of those businesses any further than they already were. However, a new one's going to come out this winter, so be ready. It's going to be another great one. So where are we going now? What's the future look like? Well, that darn Delta variant is in our face, along with, numbers going up again, so we're being told. But I will tell you that even though we don't know yet, and everything is up in the air, CDC is starting to come out with things. This morning, one of our healthcare systems spoke to group meetings and what should happen with those. It's such a fluid situation, so we've got our fingers crossed. We're pushing forward. with a lot of hope that we can not go back down like we did before, and not have our budget go back in the tank again. We call it the great interruption in our industry. Our focus, though, is to continue to evolve out of COVID as an even stronger destination management organization for Sioux Falls. What we do now and the decisions we make now are going to affect our future and where we're going, what we're doing, who's going to pay attention to us, and how well are we out there in the face saying Sioux Falls is the best place to come to. Sorry, Denver, but we really believe that. Okay, all right. The benefit of our work isn't just for us as hotels. A lot of people think that what we do is just for the hotels. That's just not true. The more we do, the more it benefits the community. If people come here and stay, they got to eat somewhere. They got to buy gas somewhere. Maybe they flew in. Maybe they broke a tooth and have to go to the dentist. We don't want that, but it does happen. They're going to go shopping. They have to fill their free time and get out and about in the community. So it's truly economic development in its finest form. You know, when we do our pheasant hunting welcome out at the airport, so many of those people talk to us about retiring here or relocating here or adding another business here, or hey, my kids could go to college at Augustana or USF. They learn about our community. So we define and showcase this city of Sioux Falls as the best place in America in so many different ways. So with that in mind, believe me, our competition is just as wildly excited and going as we are. Omaha, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Madison, Wisconsin, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, everybody's stepping it up because it's harder now than ever to get people to book out ahead of time. So our messaging is this community's messaging. We're a great place to live. We're a great place to work. Employers rely on the strength of Experience Sioux Falls to bring out the fun and the quality of life and see and do and why do I want to live here and what's going on. They all depend on us to do their messaging. What we do affects realtors. They're always talking to us, colleges, universities, healthcare, attractions, retail, the hotels, restaurants, events, and of course, venues. We work hard to keep Sioux Falls as an active, progressive, energetic place to live and visit. And we don't do this alone. We do it with all of our partners. If it weren't for the hotels, restaurants, activities, attractions, retail, media, and on, we couldn't do it. It all comes together as a big family that together, the hotels and the facilities, everyone sells. And that's what makes Sioux Falls successful. It's not one of us, it's all of us working together. So let's talk the hopeful comeback of 2022, and let's look at the budget. All right, you have that copy in front of you. I'm going to pull this out. Okay. Have I already gone over my time, Mr. Sale?
You're doing great.
All right. I know somebody will ding me when I go over my time. All right, you have the bid budget before you. You have the current budget right now, and then the purple side is what we're putting in for next year. I'm not going to talk too much about this current year unless you have questions. I think you can see the downturn. But for next year, we're really counting on an uptick. And we wrote this budget before the variant really got going and we started hearing all this stuff, but we're still determined and we're still going to go for it. We're projecting $1.7 million to come in from bid tax. Remember, that's $2 per room per night sold. Administration is $896,000. 2/3 of the administration costs are on the bid side. 1/3 is on the Experience Sioux Falls room tax side budget. So you're seeing 2/3 of it on this side. Dues and subscriptions, we have to join organizations in order to go to their trade shows, to get the lead lists, etc. Postage is postage. Mailing out visitor guides, gifts, etc. to planners around the country. Moving down to convention supplies at $7,300. Those are things like name badges, city tours, cartridges, pens, etc., to to function in the servicing area. Sales development advertising, the big one you're going to see there is digital advertising, $458,000. Now, I don't think I have to explain to anybody here today that digital is the way of the day. There's still, we still do some print, which we'll talk about, but if we aren't out there digitally, then we're not. And the main things in that 458,000 are our platform to track hotel and flight bookings and the revenue that comes in from that, ad placements that help drive the conversions from TripAdvisor everywhere to funnel programs for targeting, so we can resell and resell and resell. Our website fees, the domain hosting fees, our dashboard fees. Evergreen is a brand awareness effort for both leisure and planners, and that includes getting the visitor guide out and the meeting planners guide out. Our winter and peak campaign efforts, that's a big one. That's about $163,000 worth. That's when we're out there in those winter months letting people know, start planning. Here's what's going on. Come now, and here's what's going to be coming. Lead generation campaigns. These are who we work with to get planners' names so that we can go out and sell to those people. A video, we've got a great video going, and it's a continuation of season 1 so that we can do monthly videos for season 2. That's at about $30,000. We work with ClickRain, who is our agency, and they do all of our management reporting strategy and execution of the digital side. And all of this, we last year could do what we could do because of the money from the city and the CARES money, but now we're going all out, and we know that that's the focus. That's where people are looking to get our information. Moving on down to event ads, those are, local things that go on, festival of bands, for example, to put a small ad in their program. Sports publications, we cut it down to 1. We focused in which one would be the best one to potentially drive business to Sioux Falls. And then trade publications, about conventions, meetings, and events, we focused down on 5 national publications, bringing us to $517,000 in sales development and advertising. Going on down to printing, we've got $43,229. That's all the printing we do of everything from the packets, the brochures, et cetera, that you have before you, plus others. Now, sales development bidding. We do CROW meetings, community outreach, and that $2,500 is to go have coffee with the sales team of 5 people, go out and meet with people all the time, so buying them a cup of coffee. Pre-promo requirements. What do we have to do? We book a convention for 2022, but in that bidding process, we had to commit that we would do some pre-promo at the convention in 2021 in order for them to up their attendance to Sioux Falls. So that's what that dollar amount is. Pheasant Fest was in there, and then the Golden Age Games now is flattened out. We don't have to do anything with that financially right now. Going down to meeting planners incentive program, $15,000. If you sign if Christine signs a National Trucking Association convention, which I'm sure she's going to do, and we'd say to Christine, if you sign a contract by December 1, we will give you $5,000 toward your convention. So it's all based on room nights, et cetera, but it's an incentive program. We've got a whole $15,000 in that line item. Our competition has around $100,000 and $200,000 in their line item for that. But hey, we're doing the best we can. Meeting planners gifts, sales gifts, incentives. Sometimes we have to do that. Site visits. The National Association of City Clerks flies into Sioux Falls to look us over. And Tom's out there showing them off, showing Sioux Falls off, but we still are the ones who will do the tour, buy their lunch, and convince them that Sioux Falls is the place to be. Then you look at car rental, gas, et cetera. Now, bidding investments, $50,000. We hope that some groups come along and say, we want to come to Sioux Falls, But you got to put 10 grand on the table, or 5 grand on the table, or $2,500 on the table in order for us to consider you. And if we're chosen, then you pay that amount. Please come and ask us to do that, because we know we can sell it, and we hope they will come here. And you know what? When they generate economic impacts of $1 million to $1 million bucks, what's $2,500 investment at that point to get them here? So that's what that 50 is for. We've already committed 10 groups where it says previously committed. We've committed 10 groups for this coming year at $12,000. So you obviously can see those weren't high dollar groups that we had to commit to. But every little bit helps for a lot of these groups. All right, sales development travel, $6,500 for bid trips. We never know when we might have to go somewhere to do a presentation. Governor's Conference on Tourism, we still hope we can send 4 people to that conference. Sales Blitz, we've narrowed it down only to Washington, D.C. Why Washington? Because that's home of more associations than any place else in the country. We really hope we can get 4 people back on the ground out in D.C. making personal sales calls. And then trade and travel shows, fingers crossed we can get back on the road at $92,700, and that would involve 11 shows. Tourism, promotion and advertising, trade publications. We hope to get into 2 trade publications. Group tour sales, $1,000. When a group tour planner comes, Janet talked about the number of bus tours coming this month. I don't think we've ever had that many before, but one of our sales managers absolutely has beaten the streets trying to get those group tours in here this past year, and they're coming. So sometimes we have to like put a basket of apples in their room, or take them to lunch, or things like that. FAM tours for travel writers and tour, again, FAM tours, selling them on Sioux Falls, 2,000, and then 4 co-ops with South Dakota Tourism. We just pay a part to be in their co-ops that go out nationally and sometimes internationally. Bringing us to the bottom of $1,785,000 for this coming year. So we hope that income is much, much higher than that. I want to address income for just a minute. I want to make sure that you understand, because I heard there was maybe a question about this. If we budget, let's say $1.5 million, and we end up with income of $1.7 million, someone said to me, well, what do you do with that extra money then that wasn't approved in the budget? We write a supplemental budget for that, and then it goes back through the channels before it's spent. We don't just go out and do it. Or it goes into reserves. It just depends on what's going on, what the climate is, what's it looking like. Is it worth the investment? We don't just go spend it to spend it because it's the end of the year. Okay, so with that, I want to thank you for letting us be here. I promise you, this team back here and these volunteers back here, everybody's determined to get this industry back on its feet. We know we've got some tough days ahead, but we really are determined about it. We've got a warrior mentality about this. We're going to fight till we go down, or go down hard, or we win it. And if we lose it, we'll go back and try again. And we're committed, and we're anxious, and we've got the energy to do this. So thank you for allowing me to be here. I wonder if you might have some questions. And if you do, I'll do my best to try to answer those. And yes, sir. Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I got a call on a
Sorry, Kurt, sorry.
Yeah.
Now I owe you again.
We'll get there. Councilor Silber, questions?
What?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry, love the energy and focus as always. Thank you very much. Appreciate the efforts that you and your team had to go through, the extra efforts to cut budgets and do what you had to do, especially in the last year. So when you talked about laying a person off and furloughing employees and that, have you gotten that employee back yet, and are people back in, or what's the hopeful timeline for that?
I'll be very honest with you. We also had one of our 8-year-long sales manager decide to go into the real estate business, and something she'd wanted to do, so we lost her as well. So we've got the director of sales who was laid off, and then that position open. I was just in the hiring process, and then all this variant stuff started again, and We talked about it. I talked about it some with leadership, and we're just going to kind of wait a little bit, because if we would go downhill again this winter, I don't want to hire somebody and then lay them off again.
Right.
Or lay them off the first time. So I'm going to kind of watch for the next couple of months, and hopefully we don't see a real bad downhill trend, and then I can go back out and get those filled, because we need them.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Well, it's nice to see us rebounding a little bit. You talk about that meeting, that plan where you've got like 15,000 in there, and there's other cities that have 100. I think
Yeah.
you've told me this story before in the past. Some cities will get groups coming to town and give them leather jackets
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever it is to come to. Are we always lagging behind in that particular area, and what do we need to do to pump that up a little bit or help?
We are always lagging behind. We just need more money. I mean, first of all, we've got to be able to get the word out. So that's where all that digital advertising and the print, we have to be in the face. And then once we're in the face, if they come knocking at the door, I mean, I hate to say this, but people buy business now. I mean, it's just the way it is. So that 50,000 that's a little bit down further in the budget, that has certainly is there to help. But we had one, gosh, I think it was a few weeks ago, Patrick, it was a sports one that was, I think it was 20,000. Yeah, 20,000. So 50's not going to go too far, and the 15 is not going to go too far either. We just need more money. When we wrote this budget, we cut out, oh gosh, almost $2 million worth of things we feel we should be doing in order to meet the 1.7. So once you start cutting, you just cut as carefully as you can. Mm-hmm. You know, that digital, we just absolutely cannot let go of that. But we need more money.
Yeah. And finally, do you, I know you always say we need more hotel rooms. Obviously, when we come out of this, are we going to need more hotel rooms again?
I don't know. You know, you don't want to build more hotels for Easter Sunday. But it would, boy, this is a big subject, but, you know, at the convention center, you guys have heard me say this before, at the convention center, we need more hotel rooms attached, period. It hurts us all the time. More hotels around town, I don't know. You know, our occupancy isn't 100%. Right now, I'd be hard-pressed to say absolutely yes.
What's our total number again right now for rooms?
5944.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay.
So, you know, I hate to bring on more hotel rooms when what we have isn't even at 100%. 54.99
okay.
Hotel rooms.
Well, thanks for the presentation and all you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marshall.
Councilors, questions? Councilor Neitzer?
Thanks, Terry. Two questions. First, is there any space that's going to be coming online in the next few years that you can book, like, for example, at downtown Sioux Steel?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Greg.
Are there going to be any spaces coming online downtown, like downtown Sioux Steel, that you can book that you're aware of, or
well,
any other convention space that any of them are building that you're keeping a pulse on? Okay.
Not that I know of today that's definite.
Okay. My other question is, if you could just elaborate a little bit more. I was intrigued by the bidding investments, the 50,000. So is that something like just to get in the running for something? They'll ask anybody, if you want to be serious, you have to put down like a deposit, or is it non-refundable?
It's refundable.
Fee, or
it's like this $20,000 sports event that we received an RFP on. It's, if you're interested, you got to include that in your bid, okay? If you don't win, you're not out any money. We haven't come across anybody that's done that yet. So it's what you got to put on the table to get them here. So it's part of a bid presentation.
Okay. So, I mean, if you're selected,
then you pay it.
You pay it.
You pay it when they're here. So if we bid today for a piece of business in 2024, we pay it in 2024.
Okay.
But
so
we
it's-
have to commit in writing.
Okay, so you'll essentially just be carrying like an accounts payable for a couple of years?
Yep,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Councilors, other councilors' questions? Councilor Kiley?
Thank you. Terry, how did they keep you from bursting last year? You know, with, I'm glad
They
that we're
made me stay
providing,
home.
I'm glad we're providing you with a little bit of a release here. But anyway, getting to your advertising, the digital advertising is pretty easy to track because you get clicks. How about with the trade publications, and maybe to a lesser extent, the event ads and the sports publications? How do you track what kind of return you get on your investment in those areas?
Sometimes we can't. You know, like the event ads, let's say Festival of Bands, for example. We can't track that turns into room nights. We don't know that. But Krista, who is our genius of marketing, really studies those markets. Some of them we do get responses on the ads. Do you want to talk about that? No? She really doesn't. She loves to do this.
Hi, Crystal Orsak with Experience Sioux Falls, Director of Marketing. So we align those print publication insertions with sales travel. So hopefully they're seeing the ad, then they're meeting with our sales team, and they're getting that increased awareness and then retargeting through digital.
Okay. All right, that helps.
See,
And I would imagine that, I mean, your travel shows and your ability to be physically present is your best sales pitch and pays the biggest dividends.
yes, absolutely.
Well, let's hope that opens up and you can continue to
so.
do that. So,
The
thanks.
team did a great job, though, trying to do it virtually last year, but it's just not the same.
And then I guess one other thought too. I mean, have you explored any other avenues of income?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you very much. Thanks for the report.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Seeing none, thank you very much for your very energetic presentation.
Thank you all.
It's going to be hard to follow up, so good luck.
Thank you.
Our second presentation is from VAS Broadband. I'm going to ask Director Cotter to come up and introduce them.
Good afternoon, Council Chair and Council members. The VAS Restart Plan builds off the email that I sent you on August 25th. Just over a month ago, we paused permitting and asked VAS to close up open excavations to really start to address some of the emerging concerns from our residents. We've worked closely with VAS as they've developed a revamped and very robust communication plan. One point of note is, for your reference, so we have about 60,000 water and wastewater customers in town. VAS is already in front of about 18,000 customers. So they're already have a presence in about a third of the city today. And so they'll be able to share more with you on how they intend to get in front of or in front of the other 2/3 of our community. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to Andy Berg, Kurt Peppel, and Mike Heiberger. They're on the Public Works team that have worked very closely with the VAST team to get us to where we're at today. VAST, as you know from the email, they have begun retrofitting the front yard utility pedestals with ground flush vaults. They'll share more of their approach for the rear yard pedestals today. You asked for VAST leadership to come before you, and so today we're happy to invite Rich Fish, the CEO of VAST Broadband. He'll lead off their update. If there is time, Andy and Mike are here from our engineering team to share with you if you would like some information on front, side, and rear yard easements. We've got a couple of slides that we can show you kind of what a typical lot includes. And then I will close my remarks today by saying VAS has been very responsive. And we continue to have weekly calls with their leadership team. Mike and Jeff are here with Rich, so we can be addressing any of the emerging issues as they happen on a weekly basis. And so right now I'd like to invite Rich Fish to come to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rich Fish. I'm the CEO of Vast Broadband. With me, I've got two of the members of my senior team. Mike Harry is our Chief Business Development Officer, and Jeff Seidenfaden is Chief Commercial Officer. I think with all the gray hair that you see, we've been doing this for a while. And I would say that I'm firmly of the belief, and my management team is firmly of the belief that best practice in our business is when we are doing it in absolute partnership with the city and the citizens of your community. And so to be, from a partnership, partners have to deliver value, and we feel like, we are delivering value to that. And so when you think about it on the asset, side of the ledger, being an ex-financial person, and I think about the investment that we're making in a telecommunications infrastructure that is, next generation fiber to the home. Over the next handful of years, 2 to 3 years, we'll be investing about in excess of $60 million to construct a fiber to the home access technology that Mark was just referring to on the balance of the remainder of the city. And all the cascading, economic impact that, that type of initiative has. And I think about the employees. We have approximately 110, 115 existing employees in our Sioux Falls office. And with the national expansion initiative that we've kicked off, that is not just Sioux Falls, but also North Dakota, Wyoming, Oklahoma, we will more than double our presence of employees in Sioux Falls here just in the next couple of months. So like I said, in partnership, we have to bring something to that partnership. We have to bring, and that's kind of top of mind for me. At the same time, being a great partner also means that that you need to be humble, and you need to be self-aware, and to that end, we recognize that what we could have done better. In kicking off our expansion plan as it relates to, certainly as it relates to communicating to folks in the neighborhoods as to when we were coming, how we were going to do it, the venues that the website, a lot of things that go into the definition of, communication. And we've rectified that, as well as, certainly the pedestals, telecommunications pedestals. And we've made a commitment to go back in our fiber expansion territory to replace any, effectively the pedestals, and replace them with underground stuff. So, like I said, best practice in this is when it's a partnership, where we're doing something meaningful for the folks that live here, and it also means that we're, like I said, self-aware as to trying to continue to listen and to do better, et cetera, et cetera. So I will let Jeff and Mike give you just a little bit more details on the communication plan, as well as the redesign on the re-engineering of the network.
Thanks, Rich. So I'm going to talk briefly about the communications plans and some of the updates that we've made, and then turn it over to Mike to talk about the engineering design and some of the pedestal changes. So as Rich had said, it is a partnership for us, and we realize that we have to be great at listening to the residents and communities as we're building out, and great when we listen to our customers. One of the things that we heard was that our pre-announcements for construction weren't clear enough. So while some folks did receive them, others said that they either didn't receive them, that they weren't clear, they may have thought they were junk mail, so they discarded them. So working with Mark Cotter and team, really looking at that end-to-end process in communications, we went very basic. So we took some of the slick and colorful ad-like design off of the construction mailers so that they looked very clear. You could tell that this was something you wanted to look at. It was an official type of a notice. We're mailing to homes 3 times before construction starts. So there are 3 pieces that will arrive in the mailbox. Then there's a door hanger that arrives. Around the time as the door hanger is when we would call in locates. So we wouldn't even be seeing flags in yards until at least those 3 communication pieces are in mailboxes. We've tightened up with the USPS, so we are getting feeder mail back, so we know that these have landed in homes. We talked to our employees here as well to make sure on feeder lists they're receiving them. That's really our go-ahead at that time that we can move forward with locates and door hangers, is when we know that those pieces have had time to reach residents and they've had time to see them. Once the door hangers are placed, we'll put yard signs out again, calling attention to it. We've made some additional changes. We are starting this week, in fact, I believe today started about 30 television spots that will air weekly over the next few weeks, announcing this investment and this construction, driving folks to our website so that they can sign up if they'd like to get additional information or have two-way dialogue. They're able to do that through our website. We've improved that and added ribbons across the top that shows very clearly where to click if you'd like to sign up or you'd like to see photographs of what the yard vaults or the pedestals would look like. And then again, to get updates if you would like. And then again, those yard signs would say the construction is underway. So we've moved quite a bit in making sure that we are improving those communications and then following up as well with our contact center to make sure that we have a really tight feedback loop and measuring what that call volume is as it comes in off of construction, and then we'll go back out and make tweaks if we need to. So that's the communication changes. I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about the design.
Thanks, Jeff. Mike Harry with FAST. I think probably just in the interest of time, the relevant point here is if you look at the pictures down on the bottom, we have committed to a design change to take anything that's in the front yard or the side yard that's a above ground pedestal below. So you'll see a before. We're addressing and prioritizing the standalone pedestals first. So we will take those over and they'll look like the pictures on the right where it's just a flush mount, ground mount vault. It's about 14 inches in diameter. And then the second picture on the left is what we call co-located pedestal. Our pedestal in this picture is the dark green, probably furthest away from the sidewalk. We will take that pedestal below ground as well. So a lot of it right now is really dependent upon supply chain. We've air freighted in 288 vaults from South Africa, actually. And then we've got another 600 on the way from a source down in Texas. So we feel like we've got adequate supply coming in to address. We're trying to get the standalone pedestals done by the end of this month, and then the co-located pedestals will take a little bit longer. We're looking at mid-November for that. Hopefully get it done before the freeze. But the plan is to get them all that are in the front and on the side below ground. The backyard, and Mark referenced this earlier, the backyard will still use above ground pedestals. What we're doing is we're sourcing pedestals that are about 10 inches shorter than the one that you see in the ones that you see in the picture. Probably the easiest comparison is next to the other two. So they'll be 10 inches shorter and it's about the same or the same profile. So we're busy working on all of that and going as quickly as we can. And then the leadership reviews, we are having weekly meetings with Mark and team, Zoom calls, and we've talked about once a month, once a quarter coming in and having face-to-face sit down to just get feedback on the construction, what they're hearing, what we're hearing, share, learn, and adapt and improve. I think that's it.
Thank you. We'll take questions from counselors at this time. Counselor Erickson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. As you know, we've had a lot of feedback to ourselves as well as the city, and so I'm thankful that you are remedying the situation with over communication and making sure people understand that. One of the biggest complaints that I've heard is that the VAST employees have identified themselves as Midco employees, and there's been a lot of confusion with that. Now, this is hearsay, but it has been sent to me numerous times from constituents, and I said, well, look, I'll ask. So talk a little bit about how VAST employees are identified, what their uniforms look like, if they look identical to Midco, if they don't, but if there's any confusion with vehicles, stickers, badges, talk to me about what that looks like.
From a workforce standpoint in the field that's doing the construction, we use a company called Mears. Mears is our construction contractor. They're a Quanta company. Quanta's a $12 billion parent company of design engineering firms in construction. Mears employees would be represented with Mears shirts. They don't wear VAST branded shirts. Their vehicles would be Mears vehicles. They're basic white, plain white. I've seen the Midco blue and green, and the coloring, the paint schemes are totally different. Our paint and our color schemes are different than Midco. So I don't think from a vehicle or from any logoing there should be any confusion.
Okay, and I don't know the circumstance around that. It's just had been sent a handful of times saying, you know, we're being told that these are Midco employees, and I'm like, well, I don't know who they are. I don't know if it is VAST employees or who those employees were.
Well, Midco's also doing, Midco's also doing quite a bit of work in the area, and it could be that they were actually Midco employees
in the area
doing their own
Midco
work.
And I know it's very emotional for many that, you know, were surprised, and so I know folks were upset with anyone that was flagging or digging or doing whatever it was, and so I know it was just a lot of heightened emotion with that as well, but I just was curious on the difference of who's actually doing the work and who's not. I have more questions. I'll wait until my colleagues have.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilor Kiley?
Thank you. Rich, you stated could have done better. Well, thank you for that admission, because those of us certainly hearing the complaints, definitely would agree that it could have been done better. And I'm one that had probably 4 or 5 or 6 conversations with Director Cotter on this issue, because I fielded many phone calls, many emails from constituents, not only in my southeast district, but the southwest district and around other areas impacted too. So thank you for that admission, and thank you for the changes that you've made. And I just want to reiterate that all existing pedestals that are front or side yard will be replaced with the underground vaults. Can you explain what kind of communication has gone out to the homeowners that have been impacted with these almost 4 foot tall above ground vaults?
Sure. So we have sent out letters that were just received over the last few days where we've already done work outlining that. Also has a link to the website that has even more information about what that's going to look like as they are replaced. But we did send out a remediation letter prior to restarting work in those exact areas.
And it was addressed to the individual homeowner?
It is. It's very specific only to those addresses where we've started work.
Okay.
And then we've also, throughout our contact center, have training, so they'd be very aware if someone happens to call in, if they fit into one of those areas, and can walk them through that personally as well.
And that I appreciate, you know, because I had a lot of, quite frankly, we took some of the same, I don't know if you want to call it abuse or not, but we received some of the same communications that you received about, I wouldn't want to have this in my yard, you know, why, I mean, would you have it in yours, want to have it in yours? And 100% of the time, after going around and looking, I stated, I would not want this in my yard. So I appreciate that change. Can you, and I think that'll go a long way with helping to alleviate some of the this had to be a public relations nightmare for you as well. You're trying to gain customers,
Right.
and instead it's going the other way.
I think the one other thing to mention, working with Mark and team, putting out a full market release, letting everyone know what we're doing, so that even if it is someone that heard that maybe wasn't impacted in their own community, but still concerned that it may be coming over to their neighborhood, to address to everyone that this is work that we're doing and that we know that, that we could have done better.
Well, and I wanted to say, not only were we as counselors on the receiving end of these not happy constituents, but many of them were also blaming Mark's team too, and I think unjustly. So I would like you to address that as to who you think really should bear the majority of the responsibility for this.
You know, I think that we always strive to do right by our customers, by our communities, by our residents. I think with this one, I think if you look even at the pictures, I think our residents were right. And I hope that what they would see is that by moving forward and making the changes, even where we're co-located with others, to say, we know we can do better, we can go underground in these areas. You know, that's a big part of how we want to operate. The other thing that I would say is that we've been able to set up technology for even sentiment tracking to know if we happen to talk to a resident that is upset and uses a term like pedestal or city, calling City Hall, any of that, that we're able to escalate those within the organization and provide direct outreach, hoping that we can do that ahead of them having to talk with anyone within the city. This is our expansion, and we're proud of what we're doing. We want to be very proud of how we can do it going forward.
One more question, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for the change, and I understand that's not without a sizable cost investment on your part. So that's quite a change, and again, I think you should be credited for that. So I know as a counselor, I appreciate it. I'm quite certain that your future customers appreciate it as well. Can you explain to me how you decide whether it's going to be a front or side yard? Side yard versus the backyard? Because I think my guess is if the pedestals had gone in the back, you probably wouldn't have had the pushback that we have realized here in the last month.
Yeah, we prefer to be in the back. From the aesthetics, from the experience that the customers had, we would much rather be in the backyard. We actually designed a large section, 4x4 mile section, to be backyard easement, and there were some issues with access, and I think it was identified by a resident that there actually isn't an easement in that backyard where we had assumed it was based on placement of others. So we redesigned, and when we redesigned, we ended up in the front yard, and that's where the majority of these front yard standalone pedestals came from.
And I do understand that access to the front's a lot easier than versus the rear yard, especially when people put up fences and maybe impose on easements that they didn't even know were in existence. So, but again, thank you for addressing the issue, and thank you for appearing this afternoon. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilor Neitzer.
I have a number as well of questions or comments, so I'm going to just do a few and then I'll defer. First of all, I'm going to start with just applauding your response in working to make it right. I think you've gone above and beyond. I went and drove through the area twice after receiving a number of calls, and I did find it, you know, I was troubled. I agreed it wasn't something I would have wanted in my neighborhood, but I did go drive through shortly after you made your announcement, and I saw a lot, you know, they were gone, and there was just basically the dirt there, obviously for you to do something else. So I applaud your response. So a couple questions maybe to start with. The question about how do you decide back or front, that was answered. And I think I heard you say that at least in this particular area, there isn't, because in many neighborhoods there's a 5-foot easement in the backyard and in the front. In this case, there wasn't, so you just the front was your choice because that's where the easement is. Correct? Okay. All right. So Because I had wondered if it was just a simple, just ease of access or, okay, all right, good. You have existing pedestals in the city that are quite a bit smaller. They're green and they're kind of a cylinder, kind of a bullet shape. These new ones were quite a bit bigger. Is that because of technology, or what drives the difference in size from old to new? Because you have stuff that's been in for years in certain neighborhoods.
Right. So the new technology, so we're going all fiber to the home going forward. So these support the fiber, the splice cases inside of the vault. So it's a technology shift.
Okay. It's just, there's just a little more equipment. Okay.
Right.
The prior pedestals are hybrid fiber coax, which is an older technology. Everything that we are doing on a go-forward basis is exclusively fiber to the home, so it requires a different.
Yeah, there's just different hardware in the box.
Different hardware.
Okay. So as far as the flush mount, which I think to me is over and above, and quite something that's a lot of providers don't do that. I would think in this region, though, how is it going to work? You know, in the winter, you know, first of all, you got to know where the thing is at, and then you have it's underground, and you have frozen ground or you have snow. So I would think just the logistics, somebody needs to hook up cable. How is that going to operate?
Well, we put a locating device in the vault so the technicians can find it, and then they're just going to have to work to expose it. It is going to add a lot of effort and a lot of time from a operating standpoint, but again, it's, you know, when you're at a point where we were with, you know, the above ground pedestals in front yards and the frustration of potential, you know, future customers, you've got to make a decision. And we made a decision to take it below ground, knowing that it will add some operating costs and it will add some operating challenges.
Have you done that? Have you used these in other markets, or is this the first?
These will be the first that we specifically have deployed, but they've been used in other markets.
But this would be just the front yard. If you've got the easement, you do it in the backyard. You'd have your normal pedestal. So this may be the exception rather than the rule.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Councilor Selberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reiterate, thanks for the changes you've made addressing the issues. Being here today, like you said, being self-aware is appreciated and kind of tackling this. We did get bombarded, but it did simmer down a little bit. So here's a really silly question. Why isn't all this just underground? What's up with the green towers that, no offense, are kind of ugly, and why can't we go underground? And I know the flush mounts, we're talking this, is that new, or? Pardon me?
It's partly an economic engineering design. It's more costly to utilize the flush mounts, the underground flush mount pedestal vaults, and like I said, you can see in the alleyways and the back easements, the standard is actually the pedestals basically. So. But on a go-forward basis, like I said, that we've changed the design engineering to the extent that we have to be in the front yard. It's going to be all underground.
Do you see it all going underground and flush mount, this type thing, as we're going?
In the front.
In the front, but there'll always be something. Okay.
Yeah, I think there'll always be something above ground in the back. And one of the challenges we talked about was in this climate and the amount of snow that you're going to have in the backyard, finding something in the front, excavating, moving is a challenge in and of itself. Going to the backyard adds another layer of complexity with that. So we are going to use smaller pedestals in the back, but we're still going to be above ground.
Have you had feedback like this before in other communities? I can't imagine we're the first one. Or is it just because it kind of rolled out, it was a little rough, and that's, I mean,
yeah, this is our first expansion of this type with the fiber to the home with these pedestals. So this was the first that we had heard. I think the other thing on all ground level without having the pedestals in rear yards, I think the other point really is we strive to provide 100% on time. And so if there are outages, our ability to be able to find it quickly and restore service to areas, those backyard easement pedestals make it simpler to be able to go out there and restore service if there is an outage. So front yards, I think, like Mike said, with the locators, going out there, being able to do that. We want it to be simple for the residents. It doesn't have to be simple for us, but we balance that always against our ability to keep our service levels the way that we want to, which is having that always on for our residents.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. Well, thanks for the effort. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Follow up? Can I have another go at it? Councilor Neitzer?
Yeah, sure. The existing pedestals I referred to, the older bullet-shaped ones, will you eventually work to move there? I mean, are you looking to go through the whole city and upgrade? Because like in the west side of Sioux Falls, there's a lot of areas, including mine, that have the older style, the hybrid style. Will you be coming to replace or upgrade in coming years?
I think it's something that we've discussed. We have not made a decision on an overbuild of existing plant.
So you're focusing on areas you haven't served at all yet in the city first, in the next several years?
Correct.
Okay. And I did see a map online that showed, and I think that you had sent of kind of your staging.
Start southeast and then you come up in between the
Okay.
states there.
So that's hitting areas that you don't currently have service?
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't know that I have, well, and I guess I again will comment, just thinking about fiber, just working and just making sure that there isn't, water penetration, because, obviously the worst thing for any of your electronics is water penetration. So I do have to applaud you for going above and beyond with the underground pedestals, because that's going to create, some operational issues for you. So digging those up, I could see that, in the southern region, but I just think about when I'm replacing a solenoid in my sprinkler valve box. That's one thing in August. It's very different if I wanted to do it in December. So I guess the only other comment I have, and this is, as I was thinking about this, I think this was just an example, but it's just, it's bigger than just vast. I think it kind of just gives us an opportunity to reflect a little bit about just how we do utilities in general. There's a lot of examples. For example, even in like commercial areas, utilities are obviously incredibly important. But like in commercial areas where you have like HVAC systems, for example, if they're up on the roof, they have to be screened. I mean, there's things that you do. And then in a residential neighborhood, in a perfect world, utilities are necessary, but they would disappear into the landscape. So anything you can do to, that pulls attention to them. And so obviously there's some things we can do as homeowners, like I see here, like putting like a Carl Forrester grass and things like that around it is good, and clustering and putting them in the backyard. Just being sensitive to neighborhoods. The only other thing I guess I would maybe share, and I had somebody who sent this to me a few months back, and I have to agree with them that on boxes, and yours is an example, you have stickers that will have, obviously many times I'm sure there's like identifying information for either emergencies for certain utilities or, whatever other reason, and sometimes maybe there's some codes on it or something that tells you a certain number of a box. I would just encourage that as much as you can minimize those too, versus there's some that are quite large and they're more a marketing piece that have like your logo and everything, that in residential neighborhoods, I would just encourage that. In my personal opinion, I don't think that's necessarily the place for that. I think a very small sticker, very plain, that has the required information and isn't necessarily a marketing tool is something I would suggest. So.
One of the reasons that we've been asked why we ended up with the dark green pedestal is we wanted to be able to distinguish our pedestal from Midco's pedestal when technicians are out doing work. And there's no markings, stickers and markings on those heads.
Yeah, and I didn't see any there, but I will tell you, like over on the west side of Sioux Falls, on some of the other boxes, there started popping up all of these vast stickers that were reasonably good size, and they have your orange and and it's the sort of thing that's kind of an eye catcher and pulls your eye to it. And I would just suggest that.
Yeah, we'll take that feedback back, absolutely.
That's just my personal, and that would go, I would encourage Public Works to even think about that in terms of any regulations and whatever, that utilities are necessary, but let's try to make them just kind of, then that's why you do a green box, because it looks like a landscape. So just constructive feedback. So thanks.
Anything else? Other counselors? Counselor Kiley?
Very quickly. I don't think Councilor Neitzert's intent was to encourage you to reconsider your move from above ground pedestals to below ground vaults in talking about the cost that you're going to incur as a result of doing this. And I hope, the reason I bring that up, I hope that is not lost on your potential customers too. Your commitment to providing customer satisfaction, because I do believe customer satisfaction goes a long way and overcomes a lot of other maybe deficiencies in other areas. As you know, we pride ourselves in having a clean and clutter-free city. Some of my constituents asked, you know, you're concerned about placements of garbage cans, but yet you allow these pedestals, and I won't use some of the terminology they used, you know, right in the middle of my front yard. I mean, along that line, we do not allow signage either, whether it's political signs in the right-of-way or signs supporting your local high school or favorite football team or whatever, or rummage sales. So we try to keep it as clean as possible. Again, I appreciate your efforts.
Counselor Starr.
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief too. I guess my first question is how many need to be replaced?
There's approximately 400, and I think we've replaced about 100 so far. And then as shipments continue to come in, we will balance the replacement with new construction and spread them out.
Mr. Chair, I've got a couple questions for Director Cotter if I could, but I didn't want to jump ahead of if we're finished.
Get right after
guys. Thank you.
Director Cotter.
Thank you. Yes, Counselor.
Thank you. Part of this issue is moving easements to the front yard that definitely make it quicker and better access for our vendors to our community. When I look at the picture that they provided, we're going to bury one, but we still have the other two in the front yard. So are we requiring the other two companies to bury those boxes as well? Or not requiring, but are we looking at working with them to bury those boxes as well? Because we're not really solving, or at least the people who reached out to me, I think burying one and leaving the other two there aren't solving the issue that they had.
Right. Well, there's certain utilities, like in many cases, like the power transformers, those are not going to get buried. And so you're always going to have some above ground. I would say maybe the lens to that is as future franchise agreements come up, that if there are some of those specific requirements as a city, we could contemplate that. But I would say at this point, I would expect that certainly all the communication companies have been tuned into this discussion. But today we don't require it for them to all be flush mount.
Are we in newer developments in town moving these easements to the front yard versus the backyard type of, the access to it? I could see as a developer how this would be advantageous to have access to, servicing in the front yard versus trying to get 8 or 10 houses down with no, that we don't have alleys anymore to do that. So it's harder to get a lot of the utilities where we place them and balancing cost with aesthetics.
Sure, certainly. Andy, do you want to just give a quick overview? I know we had 15 minutes allotted and we've gone way past that, Council Chair. Do you want to just give a quick overview of the typical easements on a residential lot today?
Andy Berg, Public Works. The image on the left is just an aerial photo with the lot layout, and then the one on the right is the yellow highlighted areas represent the existing easements on those same lots. And I'm going to zoom in after a second here on a couple, but you can see how in general those utility easements fall both in the front yard and in the rear yards. So zooming in here, rear yard or front yard and side yard easement, utility easements are 10 feet wide. And then in the back, it's a total of 10 feet. It's 5 foot on each lot. And so the newer areas, that is the standard, that you've got 5 feet in the back and 10 feet in the front. So the option is there for them to locate in either location. And as Mike alluded to, they prefer to go in the back because just less issues for everybody involved. However, there can be challenges, or if there are platting issues, maybe the access is not there for them to get into the back, and then they have the ability to go into those 10-foot areas in the front.
Thank you. That covers me.
Counselor Neitzer, third time's a charm.
Just to follow up on this discussion, I assume that since it's a recorded easement, would it be the case that even though I'm fenced, my yard is fenced, if a utility person comes and they need to access it, would I not have a duty to, I mean, could I say, too bad you're not coming in my backyard? Or
they do have the ability to go in there. You know, we certainly encourage folks to have a gate that they can provide access to them without having to come through areas that aren't in the easements. You know, that's a conversation they have to have with that homeowner. If they've placed fence without a gate there, you know, that's a discussion they have to have, that they have the right to get into those locations. We certainly would not want them to just barge in. You know, we'd want them to work with the homeowners. But yeah, that easement coming from the city right away in does provide them the ability to go into that area.
Okay, and last couple little things. What requirement, if any, is there in terms of restoration? In terms of if you, let's say you break up the sidewalk or you tear up the lawn?
Sure. I might not get this exactly right. Mike may have to clarify, but our ordinances do require that the sites be fully restored when they come in and do these installations. The boring companies come in. We've had a lot of discussion about what we can and can't require as far as pedestals, and that falls to franchise agreements. However, restoration is addressed in our ordinances, and they are to restore those locations. And most of them will do, I think we've seen pictures of it, but they'll put tarps down, put the dirt on that when they're digging up the specific utilities, and then restore those areas. But yeah, that portion is covered by our ordinance.
And then finally, when you get, okay, so a company comes in and they'd like to do this, do you get like a map and they show like what each property where all the pedestals are going to go, and you look at that and you approve it, or?
They provide, yes, an overall map of their service areas they want to serve with the multiple meetings with our staff, and then our staff issue permits sequentially through that expansion area. We don't want to get too many crews out at one time. We want to limit that amount so we can manage that activity as it's going on. And then they do provide a design showing if they're going to be in the front or the back, and you know that we can look at that and see why they're going in the front or the back.
Is there any regulations like in the engineering design standards that we adopt by resolution, or is this kept somewhere else? Or I mean, is there anything that says you must co-locate, or is it just essentially you're in the easement and it looks reasonable, so you may proceed?
My understanding is franchise agreements. Basically, if once that franchise agreement is approved and accepted by the city, they're allowed to go into any general utility easement areas.
Okay, so just refer back to the franchise agreement, which would stipulate whatever the restrictions are. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I would just say for me, thank you very much to the VAST team and the people, Mark Cotter and his group, that worked through this issue. It was sometimes very emotional, a little contentious at times, but I think we're at a very good resolution, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. At this time, we can have public comment. If anybody has anything, you have up to 5 minutes to speak on any of the two subjects that we spoke of tonight. Come forward, please.
Hello.
Thank you. Please state your name.
My name's Will Bushy. I'm the guy that I'm going to take credit for having us all be here tonight to hear with the VAST conversation. I'm the one that reached out to the media, had a lot of the attention put on it. I reached out to all the city council members. And I'm the one that encouraged them to reach out to you, all the citizens and so forth. So I got 3 questions for the city council here tonight. So the first one is, why was this permit issued in the first place? When I called over and talked to Scott Heinrich, he said, yeah, he signed the permit. He was aware of what was taking place. One of his comments even was, yeah, I know they're unsightly, but when I reached out to the city councilman and a few of you reached back, I had you come out and give a tour to a couple of you, and you all agreed, and every one of you here tonight seemed to agree that this was inappropriate. When I talked to the mayor, we saw his actions. Clearly, everybody here in this room felt this was inappropriate. So why was this permit even allowed to be issued in the first place? The second question is who's going to hold VAST responsible? I mean, they talked great tonight about being good neighbors, coming in, fixing the problems, how they want to do this moving forward. But right now, even they said they're having a hard time sourcing boxes. I was told by VAST late last week that by September 30th, all of the boxes in my neighborhood would get resolved, but it didn't even sound like they had enough boxes to do that. So are you guys going to hold them responsible? Is Scott that issued the permit going to hold them responsible? Do you want me to hold them responsible? Who's going to hold them responsible for doing what they said tonight? And lastly, my question, and this was briefly mentioned earlier, and that is, what are we going to do about Midco and Quest? Now, in this exact same neighborhood that I live in, there's a tremendous amount of green boxes from CenturyLink and Midco, and you even saw in the pictures, they had them co-located right there. Just because I brought this up as a big issue in our neighborhood, why aren't these other companies required to come back and make that right? Now, some of these boxes were recently put. One of these neighborhoods is less than a year old, and they've got Century or Midco in the front yard. And to Greg's comment, there are no labels on any of these boxes. I couldn't tell you what utilities are in these boxes. And this is a neighborhood that was recently developed that backs up to city property. I still don't know why that wasn't put in their backyard. And as you guys all know, Midco just mentioned that they're going to be running fiber as well. So how do we make sure that the same thing doesn't happen with them? And I'll point out that Rick had made a comment that he stole my punchline, which is, do we also need a trash can placement ordinance with respect to green boxes that are permanently being installed? So anyway, I'm happy to take any of you guys through my neighborhood and give you a tour of what I see on a daily basis, if you'd like that. I know a few of you have already come out and done that, but thank you for your time, and I do really, truly appreciate you guys stepping up and making sure something happened on this particular project. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Tom Kapusta, and at least I found a good use for this thing. Made my notes on it. With all due respect to the gentleman back there for VAST, I have a number of questions. One might be more rhetorical, but when I went to this site and it gave me an email address for VAST to write to, which I did, a city engineer responded. So does a city engineer work for me as a city resident or work for them? Because if I write to them, to their company email address, I expect a response from them, not from a city engineer. That's very odd. Okay. I didn't order this service, so I do not expect it to show up in my yard. I'm not sure that they have an easement to get into my property. What has the city attorney said? Has he issued an opinion? Have you asked him? I'll take that as a no. There's city property right across from our houses on Bachelor Lane, so why are they not running it on city property? Why is it going on private property? Okay. When people dig in yards, they usually have to call that, is it a 411 number, call before you dig? Why don't they have to do that? What this said when I went to that site is, hey, it's all on you, property owner. If we dig into something in your yard, you better let us know what's there. Why don't they have to call before you dig, have it staked out? There's a Midco box, I think, in the corner of my three neighbors and myself in the backyard. I presume that's where that box would go. Certainly hope it doesn't go in the front yard, whether it's a flush one or not. I don't want my front yard dug up. So those are the questions I have for you and indirectly for them. I hope you answer them before somebody starts digging in my yard, which I do not approve, do not agree to. So thank you very much. And thank you, Councilman Kiley, for responding to the emails I've written to you on this and some other matters. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any other public comment?